You learned to read the room before you could read a book. You became the emotional translator for adults who couldn't manage their own feelings. You raised yourself while the people who were supposed to raise you were too broken, too busy, or too absent to notice. And now, decades later, people tell you you're too serious, too independent, too hard to read. They don't understand why you don't open up easily, why you handle everything alone, why you seem calm during chaos that destroys others. They see it as a flaw. Psychology sees it as evidence. Because when you endure a lot in childhood, real hardship, not just inconvenience, your brain doesn't break, it adapts. And those adaptations create a specific psychological profile, a set of rare traits that most people will never develop. If you had to grow up too fast, if you carried weight you were never meant to carry, if you survived a childhood that should have destroyed you, this is what it left behind. Let's start with the first trait, and it's one most people completely misunderstand. People who endured difficult childhoods develop what psychologists call hypervigilance. But this isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition on a level most people can't comprehend. You walk into a room and within seconds you know who's angry, who's lying, who's about to explode. You can read micro-expressions, shifts in tone, changes in energy that others completely miss. This didn't come from a book, it came from survival. When you're a child in an unstable environment, your nervous system learns that missing emotional cues can be dangerous. So your amygdala, your brain's threat detector, becomes extraordinarily sensitive. Neuroscience shows that children who grow up in unpredictable environments develop thicker neural pathways in the regions responsible for threat assessment. Your brain literally rewired itself to keep you safe. And now, as an adult, you can't turn it off. You notice everything. The pause before someone answers, the forced smile, the tension no one else feels. People call this overthinking, but you're not overthinking. You're reading data they can't even see, and that's not a weakness. That's a survival skill most people will never need to develop. The second trait is one you probably don't even recognize as special because it's just how you've always operated. Radical self-reliance. You don't ask for help, not because you're proud or stubborn, but because you learned early that help doesn't come, that adults who were supposed to protect you couldn't even protect themselves, so you figured it out. Whatever the problem was, you solved it. You became resourceful, independent, capable, not because you wanted to, but because you had no choice. Psychology calls this an internal locus of control. You believe that outcomes depend on your actions, not on external circumstances. And while this makes you incredibly competent, it also makes you exhausting to be around for people who expect you to need them. Because here's the truth. You don't know how to receive support. You don't know how to be vulnerable without feeling like you're drowning. You learn that needing people is dangerous, so you built your entire identity around not needing anyone. And the cruel irony? On the same trait that made you survive is the same trait that keeps you isolated. The third trait is the one that confuses people the most. You have an unusually high tolerance for discomfort. While others panic at the first sign of instability, you stay calm. While others fall apart during crisis, you become functional. While others need comfort and reassurance, you just handle it. This isn't strength in the traditional sense, it's nervous system calibration. Your baseline for normal was set so high in childhood that adult problems register as manageable by comparison. Psychologists call this stress inoculation. When you're exposed to chronic stress early in life, your cortisol response system adapts. You can tolerate higher levels of uncertainty, discomfort, and chaos without breaking. But here's the shadow side. You don't know what peace feels like. Calm feels boring. Safety feels suspicious. You're so used to operating in crisis mode that you unconsciously create problems just to feel normal. And when life is actually going well, that's when you're most anxious because your nervous system doesn't trust stability. It's waiting for the other shoe to drop. The fourth trait is something most people see as coldness, but is actually profound emotional intelligence. You've developed what psychologists call affect tolerance, the ability to sit with intense emotions without being consumed by them. You don't panic when someone cries. You don't shut down when someone's angry. You can hold space for other people's pain without trying to fix it or run from it. Why? Because you had to learn this young. You witnessed emotions that were too big for a child to process: rage, despair, breakdown, and you learned to stay present without drowning. This makes you the person people come to in crisis, the one who doesn't judge, the one who can handle the truth, the one who stays calm when everyone else is falling apart. But it also means you carry other people's emotions long after they've moved on. You absorb pain you were never meant to carry. And because you learned early that your own emotions were inconvenient, you still don't know how to process them. So you hold everything. You become the emotional container for everyone around you, and you never ask who's holding you. The fifth and final trait is the most powerful and the most painful. You developed what Carl Jung would call premature individuation. You became yourself too early. While other children were protected, sheltered, allowed to be innocent, you were forced to confront complexity. You saw the world as it actually is: unfair, unstable, indifferent, long before you were ready. And that shaped you into someone who doesn't need illusions. You don't believe in fairness. You don't expect the world to accommodate you. You don't wait for permission to exist. This makes you wise beyond your years, philosophical, deep. You understand suffering in a way most people never will. You have emotional range that others can't access, but it also means you lost something you can never get back: the ability to be carefree, the luxury of naivety, the comfort of believing someone else will handle it. You were forced to grow up before your brain was ready, and while that gave you depth, it also stole your lightness. Now let's talk about what nobody tells you. These traits aren't just adaptations, they're evidence of something rare. Most people who endure severe childhood hardship don't develop these traits. They break, they stay broken, they carry the wound as an identity, but you didn't. You metabolized the pain, you transmuted it into capability, you built yourself into something functional, even powerful, out of the ruins of what should have destroyed you. Psychology has a term for this: post-traumatic growth. It's the idea that some people don't just survive trauma, they evolve because of it. But here's what's important to understand: this doesn't make the trauma okay. It doesn't justify what happened to you. You shouldn't have had to develop these traits. You should have been protected, nurtured, allowed to be a child. And the fact that you turned pain into strength doesn't mean the pain was necessary. It just means you're resilient. And resilience isn't something to celebrate when it came at the cost of your innocence. So where does this leave you now? Because these traits — hypervigilance, self-reliance, stress tolerance, emotional intelligence, premature wisdom — they helped you survive childhood. But they might be hurting you as an adult. You need to learn when to turn off the hypervigilance, when to ask for help instead of doing everything alone, when to admit that you're not okay instead of just functioning through it. You need to understand that the nervous system that kept you alive in chaos is now overreacting to safety, that the walls you built to protect a vulnerable child are now keeping out the connection you desperately need. This is the work: not erasing these traits, but learning when they serve you and when they trap you. Because you are not a child anymore. You are not in danger. The people who failed you then don't define your worth now. And the survival strategies that saved you don't have to be your identity forever. So here's what I want you to hear. If you recognize yourself in these 5 traits, you're not broken. You're not damaged beyond repair. You're not too much or too guarded or too complicated. You're someone who survived something that should have destroyed you. And you didn't just survive, you became capable, aware, and emotionally sophisticated in ways most people will never understand. Yes, it cost you something. Yes, you carry weight others don't see. Yes, you're tired in a way sleep can't fix. But you're also proof that the human spirit can endure almost anything and still build something beautiful from the wreckage. You don't owe anyone your softness. You don't have to explain your boundaries. You don't have to apologize for the walls you built when no one else was protecting you. But you do deserve to feel safe enough to put them down. You deserve to be held the way you hold everyone else. You deserve to rest without waiting for the next crisis. Because childhood taught you how to survive. But adulthood is where you finally get to learn how to live. And you've earned that more than anyone.